Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 57th Live Cybersecurity Awareness Forum panel session. Today, we're going to examine some of the challenges around communicating across functional teams about cybersecurity. I'm Scott Wright, the CEO and Chief Engagement Officer at ClickArmor, and your host for today's session. The CSAF is an open collaboration group for anyone interested or passionate about security awareness and human risk management. So if you're a security awareness manager, security professional, business manager, just concerned about cybersecurity or human vulnerability, then welcome. And we have a small but mighty panel of security experts today with a diverse audience ready for some fun and informative discussion. The CSAF is brought to you by ClickArmor, the employee cyber confidence builder. And if you're looking for a more engaging employee cybersecurity training experience and a more effective way to train staff on things like remediation, especially role-based training and just tailored content, then we'd love to talk to you. So we'll share more about ClickArmor towards the end of this session. But now let's get started on our roundtable. So I'd like to ask everybody, just if you haven't already, please enter where you're coming from around the world, and we'll do a really quick tour around the world. And I'm going to ask the panelists now to introduce themselves one at a time, just 30 to 60 seconds. Tell us about your role, your background, what you're passionate about. So I'm going to start with Aaron.
Hi, I'm Erin. I work for a tech company called Fastly. I am the senior security training and awareness lead. I just got promoted, so the title's new to me.
Oh,
So I'm
nice.
just relearning what
Congratulations.
my title is. Um, but I've worked at companies of all different sizes and in different industries. And I've been working in the security training and awareness field for about 7 or so years.
That's cool. Awesome. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And Sajib.
Yeah. Thanks for Scott. Thanks for inviting me to this panel today. I'm super glad to be here. So my name is Sajib. I'm right now the director of IT and security at Potluck. I've been working in IT for the past 10 years, with a focus on building secure and scalable systems that kind of supports business growth. In the past, I've worked for companies like Apple, also worked for a Canadian wealth management firm, helping them doing the initial assessments for fintech startups prior to investments. So a lot of experience in terms of scalable IT systems that also bringing these companies up to enterprise grade systems. So
Nice.
those are some of the I have some very cool fintech stories if opportunity comes up to share them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But now I'm overseeing basically the infrastructure and compliance of Potluck and also, leading the security framework at Potluck so that, we can consistently work with our target clients that are mainly PE and consulting firms. So glad to be here and super excited to for the discussion we're gonna have today.
That's awesome. Really glad to have you here for the first time, Sajib. And maybe people didn't catch the name of your company. If you want to just type it in the chat so they can understand, it's not potluck like your dinner, it's potluck. So, Fleetus, go ahead.
Sure. Seasoned IT security professional, worked in several different industries from financial, utility, regulated utilities, and recently in a software development company. As I said recently, I was a former senior leader, senior manager of security operations at a backup and recovery technology company, and currently in transition. So happy to be here today.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fleetus, towards the end, if you want, I'll let you, talk a little bit about the kind of stuff you're looking for and who you might want to connect with. So,
Sounds
we'll
good.
So let's just do a really quick round table. We have folks here from Poland, North Carolina, Canada, Maryland, uh, other Canada spots, Ottawa, Calgary, Montreal, uh, Portland, Maine, more Calgary, lots of Western Canada, North Carolina, and awesome. So let's just get started. One of the things that I do typically here is I will just share my screen and give a little bit of a, whoops, there we go, a little bit of context around this topic. So I decided to go back to my MBA school in 30 years ago and say let's make sure everybody's on the same page of what a basic communication process is. And you've probably seen variations of this before, but and you can find many different articulations of it. But I just thought I'll put down what my perception of this whole idea is, and that is you've got a sender and you've got a receiver. That you want to communicate between. And so the sender wants to get his message to the receiver, and he has some intent, some idea, creates a message that he thinks is going to mean something to the other side, and then they transmit it. Then it goes over some channel, whether it's air or wires, and there's sometimes noise or things that interrupt it, and then it gets received, hopefully, and interpreted and understood by the receiver. And maybe if you're lucky, the receiver will acknowledge what they heard. And so that's the basic process we're really hoping to get. And so when we think about some of the challenges with just communicating about cybersecurity with different functional areas, you wonder sort of where in this process things can maybe get disrupted or go not exactly the way you want. So that's my overall picture of it. Happy to hear anybody's comments on it. If you have a better model that you like for general communication, then feel free to put it in the chat. Um, so a few other things that I thought of that were interesting to me, and again, happy to have anybody add to their thoughts in the chat. But some of the areas where I've seen things go not ideally is, in technical terminology. We're starting to hear a lot now about artificial intelligence and things like prompts and hallucinations. And how do people feel about that when they hear them, if they are not technical? And other technical terminology, especially around cloud, we talk a lot about different security technologies and acronyms. We talk about tenants and rogue access points and all kinds of different things. And I think sometimes these things slip into our terminology or our vernacular, as Fleetus would call it, to um, maybe confuse people and or maybe give them some different perception. Maybe things are just more technical than they can handle. So those are some of the areas. And then, of course, we've got compliance and policies that we talk about, controls and violations, and these sound very rigid and bureaucratic. But we also have things like new staff coming on board. We've talked about this in a previous session on onboarding, where people come in with a certain set of understanding about security and about how business and communications work, and maybe things are different in your organization. So there's that need to sort of step back and recognize what might need to be updated in somebody's understanding. Even different perceptions of what risk means in general, we can take for granted. Some of the other areas that I've seen include uh, different vocabulary within different disciplines. So, as I mentioned, risk in legal terminology, there's discussion of integrity and disclosure, and we have some very specific meanings for those when we talk about information security. So, we want to make sure that when we're talking to the legal teams, we have that in mind. And other teams, manufacturing, talk about authenticity and integrity in their processes, which may not mean the same things as what we're trying to get at. So, hopefully, some of those ideas resonate, and I'm happy to discuss them as we go along. The format today usually is that, first of all, I'll do some poll questions. So I'm going to launch a poll right now. And with that, I hope people will answer, but we're going to move on to the open question for the panelists, and everybody will just sort of give their views. And certainly you can give your views and questions within the chat about each of these different questions. So the first poll question, usually I do these to be sort of closed-ended with some multiple choice, and just to give people some insights into what people in this session are thinking. So the primary challenges that you face when communicating security risks to non-technical stakeholders could be a lack of understanding of technical terms. It could be different meanings for some terminology across functional areas, like I just talked about. It could be resistance to change, or it could be some just lack of prioritization for having time to think about security at all. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts on that. And if the panelists have any thoughts on the poll question before we move on, happy to jump in there. But we'll move, first of all, just to that open question, which is what communication approaches have you found most effective when explaining technical security concepts to non-technical teams? This is just an open question. If you want to change the question or address something that I talked about earlier, feel free. Anybody in the panel want to start things off?
I'll take a first tab and then
Sure.
move around.
And
So
just before you start, Fleetus, I just want to remind Aaron and Sajib, if you want to put up your hand, if you have a comment or want to jump in next, just let me know. And if you're in the chat, you can also say, raise your hand or just type in something. So go ahead, Fleetus.
So first off, Scott, I'll let you know I can't raise my hand. I was trying to find that, and so I don't know where that
Oh,
feature, but I'll look for it in a moment. But so first off, I think to pull out our dad jokes again, so what do you do if you get locked out of your house? You talk to the lock because communication is key. So that's my
ooh,
opening joke that I use often to talk about communication. So the first thing you need to do is start with what is the common language you're going to use, then you need to break down the curse of knowledge. So common language is, to your point you said earlier, before you use an acronym, define the acronym. If you don't need to use the acronym, don't use the acronym. Like it's very hard when you're talking to business folks and all you do is talk in alphabet soup. Next thing, the curse of knowledge. You have to remember what it's like to be a novice. None of us in this room can go back to unlearning something. So for example, if I say loop, swoop, and pull, all of us on the call know that I'm asking you to tie your shoe. But if I say that to a 3-year-old, they don't know what loop, swoop, and pull means. So it's like getting to that. You got to define your terms, define your language, set precedents, and say how you're going to use terms. So, for example, in a breach situation, you don't use the term breach. You start with an event. You describe what an event means. Then you talk about an incident. What does an incident mean? Then you talk about how we're going to go into an incident response, which is where your technical teams are working. Then you'll move into incident management. This is where your business comes in. This is when your CFO is here, your CEO, your CTO, your CIO. This is where your C levels are coming to the table, and then your outside counsel. So it starts with build a common language and break down the curse of knowledge.
I love that idea. I mean, it reminds me of another communication book I read called Made to Stick. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's by Chip and Dan Heath. And they talk about the curse of knowledge where they used some really good examples around. Um, they did some study somewhere where they asked people to see if they could recognize a nursery rhyme just by clapping the rhythm of it, right? And it is incredibly hard. But if you know what the nursery rhyme is, it sounds very obvious. So it is a really good example of that. So Aaron, yeah, go ahead.
This is partly for Fleetus. It's under the react button. It's where the emojis are now. Just FYI. Because I also struggled to find it. Is that there? Oh, well, that's where mine is. Anyways, um, echoing what Fleetus was just talking about, I always talk about what makes like a great math teacher different from a not so great math teacher and what changed stuff for me. Um, is being able to translate, like you were saying, really at any sort of level, understanding that every part of your organization is going to comprehend stuff differently. And being able to translate it at different levels is super important for people to comprehend it because you don't want to talk too simply to people who are more technical. And you do want to explain, like you said, some of those acronyms to people who maybe don't understand it. But the most important thing for me when it comes to effective communication, um, is never assuming that somebody knows something. Over explain it. Rather over explain it than have to put somebody in a position where they have to ask the question. Just because sometimes asking a question, even though we always say there's no stupid questions, you don't want to put somebody in that vulnerable position when you're trying to teach them something, because the second they feel vulnerable and defensive about something, they shut down and they're not listening anymore. So if you can avoid people putting somebody in the vulnerable position or a defensible position, to start, that really has a huge impact.
Love it. Thanks very much, Aaron. Sajib, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really liked Fleeta's comment on establishing a common language because that's the first step, I guess. And then Aaron's comment on no, like not everyone should know the tech language in the company other than the IT, which is their job basically. So yeah, I mean, one of the thing that I've learned in the past while I was doing my customer service in IT, that's essentially started with support role. It's not client's job to know all the technical terms. It's your job to explain it to them, right? So I think that helps even at this point where when you get into an organization, you try to make it everyone's security and tech, everyone's responsibility because everyone is using tech and defending the organization in one way or the other, right? Before joining any organization, I try to first establish a common shared channel of communication with everyone within the company so that every time there's something happens, I have an open channel to discuss it and spark conversations within the company. It can happen through as simple as like a Slack shared channel where like, you're basically introducing a lot of different terms, but slowly people are going to pick it up and it will basically spark an interest in them, so that when the time actually comes and something really big happens within the company, then you can basically, like see that everyone has visibility over that shared communication, right? I think that's the first step, like sharing an open channel of communication with not one person, not only the CEO, not only the COO or the CTO, but everyone within the company. That can start with individual contributors to like, level up. And that's how you're going to gain visibility. And IT and security team will not work in a silo at that point. So that would be my first step.
That's awesome. I want to also recognize a couple of comments in the chat. So Arthur mentioned, there's an interesting assumption that the sender of a message has an expectation that the receiver will take some action. And so that's an interesting thing, and maybe it isn't always true. Maybe it's just I'm sending you something for informational purposes in case you need it. When you're doing something, it might be useful. But I think in general, a lot of times when we're communicating about security, we do want people to change their behavior. And so that's a really good point, Arthur. Also, Jeffrey mentions that there's another interesting challenge that he's seen, and I totally relate to this, and that it's around live phishing simulations. So how do you demonstrate that the security awareness product that you're using to do those simulations is doing its job, aside from the graphs and spreadsheets? In my view, I think there not very many people in the organization really know the context of those tests and how they're set up, what they're actually supposed to be doing, and a lot of the implications around what does it mean that we registered a click? Does that even mean somebody did, or is there any doubt about it at all? So there's some really good, I think, need there for people to actually think about how they're going to communicate the results of the data that comes from their security awareness program. Fleetus, do you have a
I
comment
was
there?
going to add a little bit to both that, and I'll see Elizabeth came in too, is going back to, and I think I mentioned it pre-channel, so I'll say it again, is you have to be bilingual. So you have to be able to give them the business acclimate of why we do security awareness, and then you give them the technical reasons. And Elizabeth is coming in with that. Explain why we do it. What is the return on investment that we're objectively doing and subjectively achieving? So the objectives of your program and subjectives. So it goes back to another analogy. I'm speaking right now in a broadcast. Everyone on here can hear what I'm talking about. So I don't know who's listening. So when I broadcast something out, because we're audible right now, it could be the person who's bagging my groceries, not the cashier, who's hearing the conversation. It can be the executive assistant who happens to be in the room when you're talking with the C-level, who gleans the information. So it's not monocast where it's one-to-one. It's a broadcast conversation. So be aware of what you're saying and how you're saying. To Aaron's point earlier, distill it. I get yelled at, but I use like the Fisher Price analogy. Get it into 3 colors. Can you get it down to 3 points? If you can get it down to the 3 distinct colors that makes a Fisher Price toy, the same analogy works when you're trying to distill something in a way that's digestible as 3 simple points.
That's cool. Oh,
This
yeah,
isn't
go ahead.
this isn't general. This is very specific to Jeffrey's question. Um, so we don't run phishing simulations now, but when I did run them at my last company, um, to prove effectiveness or to show some effectiveness of not necessarily the phishing simulation itself, but how effective our communication was to the people um, who fell susceptible to it, we would host voluntary sessions, informational sessions with everybody that joined or everybody that was vulnerable to phishing. So we would send out an email saying, hey, this is an optional session if you want to join it. We're going to talk about what the phishing simulation was. We're going to go through everything. It's going to take 20 minutes, not too much time out of your life. And what I would do is I'd take that list of people that attended the sessions, keep that little tucked away in the back of my head in an Excel sheet. And when we would refish that group, we would run an analysis to see who showed up and learned, who did not show up and didn't learn, and how well those two different groups did. And we did find statistically significantly that the group that attended our sessions did, on average, do significantly better. So, very specific answer to the
Some
question.
real data. Yeah, I mean, that's awesome.
It's a lot of VLOOKUPs. That's all I'll say. If you know how to do a VLOOKUP, it's great. But that's
I
it
know
was
that
a really
pain.
good
Yeah.
stat to show.
Yeah, excellent. Great ideas. Okay, so I'm going to start our next poll question, and I keep putting this in the wrong place. Here we go. And it will be, which communication approach do you find most effective when explaining technical security concepts to non-technical teams? Is it using analogies and metaphors? Is it simplifying technical jargon, visual aids, diagrams, and infographics, regular training opportunities, or you don't know? But I mean, this goes right to Aaron's point just now. So let people answer that in the poll and open up the next question, which is, what have you seen as successful approaches to establishing two-way communication channels between security teams and other functional areas to exchange security insights? So again, I think this may resonate with some of the stuff that has been talked about, but happy to expand on that. So Aaron, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say this before I have to drop in 5 minutes, make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
I get it. To get a successful two-way communication channel, you have to open the channel. So I just want to say that first, because I feel like sometimes we forget to acknowledge that we are open to talk to our employees. And I'm saying it because I say it all the time, every time I onboard our new hires. I say, please consider us formally introduced at this point, and I want you to reach out with me, like to me on Slack with any questions or comments or concerns that you just want to say, hey, or send me a little Giphy, whatever it is. But to establish something that's effective, you have to open the door in the first place. And I feel like sometimes we forget to actually open the door.
Excellent. Fleetus found the hand raise button.
So I'll lower my hand now. I want to go to the point we talked to Sajeev earlier. Like we had previously multiple Slack channels. I had an RSS feed that I set up mainly for my team, but I allowed anyone in the company to subscribe to it. It pulled in ISACs, it pulled in well-known high fidelity news sites so that they could learn. And then we would pull specific articles out of it and post it into a security awareness channel that we would use to target both personally and professional side of it. So it's using that, establishing the channel to Aaron's point. Second, I loved your poll question because it's something you probably heard me say, and I've already done a couple times in this presentation. Talk in analogies and metaphors that they understand. So when you're talking with a C-level or an accountant, talk about credits and debits and apply it back to a technology. Again, I was in an Uber about a year ago, and my driver was a dental hygienist. So we talked about why do you floss and why do you brush? Something that's very familiar to them. It's preventative maintenance. So it's how I was teeing up MFA, how you do multi-factor authentication. You want to protect yourself. So I started with brushing and flossing and drove it home that we set strong passwords and we set multi-factor for preventative and access controls, just like you would floss your teeth, brush your teeth, and eventually rinse. And so, like, you just have to give them an analogy or something that ties back into something they already relate to. So make it personal and remind them that security starts from the time they wake up until the time they go to bed. So the sooner they can realize that they are a target from the time they wake up, the first time they check their phone, to the time they go to sleep when they actually shut down their phone, their laptop, if they do, and roll over and go to sleep. So it's making it personal and then using stories.
Excellent. Sajib.
Yeah, so for me, I think, like a lot of the challenges comes with the easy solution for me because I've worked for tech companies for the last 10 years. So, tech companies have to abide by certain security frameworks. So, a lot of the time, you don't have to prove so hard why we need certain tools. But one of the things that I always try to do is that in every organization, you're going to find like some major departments that are critically responsible for the organizational success and growth. So oftentimes you're going to find that it's the revenue ops team, the legal, and the finance team, right? So I think to open a channel of communication between those major departments first, because that's who you're going to ultimately hold them responsible for everything security related, is a third-party risk management. So this is something that where I would start in involving the major teams in, because when you get them to collaborate in building a questionnaire, let's say, so every software that's coming into the company, you basically work on that questionnaire and hold them responsible for those specific parts, where there is finance, there's the revenue ops, the integrations, the legal terms and everything. So once you see that every time, once you have built a successful vendor risk assessment process within the company, you will see that these teams are going to pay more and more attention in the security side of things, okay? Because a lot of the times they don't start with a full understanding of why we're doing it, but slowly, slowly they see the value of like, okay, you know what? The risk assessment part that we built now actually gives me more visibility of every software that we're actually onboarding. That gives me a proper understanding of budgets and like recurring expenses. Whereas the legal team thinks that, okay, you know what? Now, like I know all the contracts, all the new softwares that are getting onboarded. Um, I have a very good understanding of like how these softwares are integrated and what is the recurring schedules of all the terms and deadlines and stuff. And for the revenue operations team, they know that, okay, sales team are using all these softwares and I have integrated our CRM and everything with this. So like essentially all the teams now are building basically a register of all the softwares that are coming in, and everyone is all of a sudden is very invested in the security side of things. So now ultimately at a certain point you're going to see that these teams are going to hold the entire company responsible at a certain point because they have visibility to it. Because otherwise, if you're only the IT and security team responsible for everything and no other team has any understanding of what's going on, then at a certain point, they're not going to feel that, oh, they're responsible for that, right? So I think at this point, all my other teams have a very good understanding of supply chain risk management than I do, because I've basically, spent a very considerable amount of time of what are the risks if we don't actually follow a supply chain risk management framework. So it's ultimately, I think, once you put the time in building these strategies and building this, frameworks in place within the company, you are going to see that teams are showing more interest and like they will raise the alert when something else is going to happen that's not following the process and procedures you have put in place. So that's I think that's very, very useful.
Yeah.
Excellent.
On that point, I think just to drive home what something I pulled from that and to go with the analogy they just put in fast food, it's helping them understand how they learn. People learn different ways. So is it formal education? So it's us training them. Is it the school of hard knocks, having their identity stolen, being burglarized? Or is it someone coming alongside them? This is where your buddy system, your peers of being able to see something, say something. So there's informal, formal, and then just the school of hard knocks of things happening. So it's important that when you communicate, you think about those three and get to that point with them. Do they want informal, where it's just passive, me broadcasting information? Do they want formal? Do they sign up to Aaron's point for a training? Or can they share a success story? It's easier and more convincing when an account rep or salesperson stands up and says, "This is how I was scammed," versus the security team doing it. Because now it's personal. Now it's relatable because this happened to a colleague,
Hmm.
not the weakest link, not a user. Your colleague fell for this, and their colleague is standing up and sharing with the stand in a all hands meeting, a staff meeting, a stand
Yeah.
up, how they fell victim.
That's amazing because it just reminded me of a training session I was doing maybe 10 years ago at a pharmaceutical company. They'd brought me in for compliance reasons to do training for their staff on security awareness. And it was kind of early in the days of doing security awareness briefings for all staff at that time. And I was telling them about the new Microsoft support scams that were hitting people, at that point, it was usually people at home getting a call saying, "Hey, your Windows computer is giving errors. This is Microsoft. We're going to help you, and then charge you." And I was telling them about this in that context. And the CIO for the organization was in the back of the room. He says, "Can I make a comment?" He says, "This is happening to us right now. Our regional office in the UK got a call. Somebody there got a call saying it was the help desk. And we had a ransomware attack. Actually, I don't even think ransomware was there, but we had a virus. And, we need your help in downloading a patch." And so it was really good to have somebody with inside knowledge of the business processes and how the operation works to be able to relate it in a way that made sense to people rather than just generic content. Go ahead, Fleetus.
I'm just going to take Jeffrey's question. So this is something that I've done in previous roles. For those who don't know, I think I do security operations. That's been my bread and butter. Done it for the last 10 years. Um, we had a deck that we put together every Friday that outlined the events we tackled that week. This is the alerts, this is the incidents we worked, this is the events we covered, and we put it in what we called a bow tie. So anyone who's done military, it funneled in and showed what we are. And then we also brought in industry knowledge, and we put it in like a 3 or 4 slide deck that we gave to our director. The director could take it north if they chose to, could publish it somewhere. I think at the end of the day, it went to our CSO because we had a chief security officer who owned physical compliance and cyber. And then he was able to, during his board meetings, staff meetings, teams, here's the bow tie report from our security operations center on what they tackled this week with some threat intel and some stuff. They can be massaged down to be disseminated. Okay, this is how finance was hit this week. This is how legal was hit this week. This is how X, Y, and Z. And we broke it down into like a bow tie report that showed these are the phishing attempts, these were the investigations we did. This is the threat intel we ingested from our ISACs, and this is what we pushed north so that they're aware of what the blocking and tackling looked like that week from their security operations.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think also the idea of whether or not you need to communicate in legal terms, or you have to get the legal team involved on some of the terminology. It's possible, and I think from my experience, it's more likely in larger enterprises where there are, potentially bigger legal risks, for example. In
Yeah, most of the
smaller,
stuff shouldn't go to customer until it's gone through marketing for
yeah,
branding and it's gone through legal for terminology. So those are the two people who need to make sure that the brand is right from marketing's point of view and legal has blessed the terminology that you're pushing out.
yeah, for sure. All right, I'm starting our last poll, so I'll just bring it up here to show everyone what it is, and that is, how does your organization establish two-way communication channels between your security teams and other departments? So similar to what we've been just talking about, just like to get a sense from the people attending, how you're seeing this stuff actually work. And so our next question is, similar on the same vein is how can you demonstrate the business value of functional teams of improved collaboration with the security team members? So one story I will share and it illustrates a little bit of some of the things we're talking about when Sajib said, you immerse yourself in some of these teams. There is a CIO actually who I came to know who used to be a lower level member of the security team, and he became the CIO. And he didn't really have that much perspective on the entire organization. So the first 3 months of his job as CIO, he literally just went to every business meeting in the organization and didn't state anything, didn't try to convince anybody of anything. He was just listening. And so as people start to recognize that you're there and understanding what they're doing, and eventually when you do decide to speak up, they actually start to listen more. And so you can maybe not so much demonstrate value in quantitative terms, but people will immediately see value if they know that you've actually been listening before you try and tell them what to do. So that was my experience with somebody who's been in that position. Sajib, any thoughts there?
Yeah, for me, honestly, I would say like, in terms of showcasing all the existing tech stack that you have, that is a big responsibility on the IT and security team, right? Because earlier there was a question about like, how can we, like show the value of like a security awareness training platform, right? Once a budget has been approved for a tech for a tech solution, we keep on using it. We know the value of it, but like, it never goes the aftermath of that value never goes up to the CEO or COO, right? So I think it always comes down to you to basically, like kind of do a publicity, like a marketing of like, okay, these tech stack are here. That's what they have been doing. Like make sure that, always reporting, even though they don't need to be reported, but sometimes like it helps kind of showing that, okay, this platform, we have been spending what, five grands a year. It's actually bringing in some value. So I think that we need to do a better work in terms of like, showing the value after the tech has been implemented and, always showing and like always basically like showcasing the value of it afterwards. So I think that is something that I've seen in the past that like we don't do it as good. But like putting that up front all the time basically gets them to learn, okay, this is what this piece of tech is doing on a regular basis, right?
Good point. Fleetus, do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I didn't. It's coming back to me in a second. I kind of lost it after I was listening there. Oh, the best way, and I think there's two things. To be honest, my COO, previous CEO, said it best. I know you're doing your job when you don't wake me up in the middle of the night and I don't see our name in the paper. So it's like thinking about how we communicate. So it's sometimes it's important to just say we're here and here's how you come. So like the 30, 60, 90, I think going back to your story. When a new security leader comes in, they should go mind their business, go learn what the business does, how they operate before they try to implement any new technology, process, or procedures. Because you don't want to build this nice, shiny brick pathway that your users are just going to cut across because you're impeding them. Because we all know, and if you don't, I'm going to tell you, the business is right if security impedes them, not security. If security impedes the business and keeps the business from doing their job, security is wrong, not the business. At the end of the day, we are here to enable the business to do their job effectively and efficiently with nominal disruption and delay. We will disrupt, we will delay. And to Ajib's point, we did road shows where we showed them this is what our security tools look like. This is what an end user block will look like. This is the color scheme. This is the wording. This is what our screens look like. If you see anything other than this, it's not us. Report it. See something, say something. So we road showed what a proxy block looked like, what a firewall block looked like, what an endpoint block looked like when we were showing all these to the user. Same with responses. This is what we will email you from. This is the email address. This is the domain that we will send stuff from you. Anything else is not us. We would never send for a spoofed domain, a non-company domain, and it will always come from this alias or this other alias if it's a widespread com. But if it's a direct communication from one to one, it's coming from this so that they were aware this is a legitimate email. And we taught them how to legitimize the email as well by building the champions and understanding how email security works, how network security works. And this came through their onboarding, through the micro learnings that we were able to push out outside of their annual training and their onboarding. Because onboarding is important, but anyone remembers their first week on the job, you remember very little of the training you went through in week one. To be honest, you remember very little.
Yep, for sure. Sajib.
Scott, if time allows, I have a very cool story to share over here. So,
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
I started working on Potluck with the sole, with the sole mission to actually get Potluck, a Type 2 audit, so that, it can actually, secure more businesses with the P and consulting firms that often comes with very tight regulations, right? I think the first year after, we had built and established all our controls, I wanted to get the CEO involved in our incident response tabletop. Okay. So it was basically inspired by NIST framework in terms of prep, containment, eradicate, and then, post-incident activity. And then I think the first, in the first invitation I had sent the CEO, he said, "Oh, I don't have to be there, and you can check with my chief of staff if you need someone to attend from the CEO team." So I basically had written to him, I'm like, I would actually, get the chief of staff involved, but it's not his company. And I told him there's two reasons that you should actually attend this meeting. First of all, this is what it's going to protect your company. And the second thing is you understand what's going to happen when there will be a disaster. So that was the 2 points I think that convinced him. And once he was part of it, the incident response tabletop was very interactive. It was very fun. And what are the next steps? And it was like a quiz type thing. He was super, super impressed with, how things are rolling in terms of security within his company. So I think that is the showcase. Sometimes they're going to say no, they're going to push back when, it comes to time, investing that time to understand what security is doing within the company. But I think you can just, tell them that, what, you have to be here. you have no choice, you know. So obviously, you're going to do it in a fun way. You know, you need to make sure that you communicate properly with your CEO. But like it comes down to showcasing of what the security team is doing and why it's important. So that was my cool story, and I think those are some of the things that you can probably use to kind of like constantly showcase what each and every single piece of tech is doing and providing as business value within your organization.
Excellent. I think Elizabeth made a good comment. I'm going to read it out for the benefit of people who may be watching this as on a recorded video later. But she says, visuals and examples are so helpful to me. On the topic of personal stories, my friend has a company which sends emails with attached invoices. One of their clients received a fake email and sent their payment to the attacker. The conversation with my friend over how the attacker did what they did and how he had to work to recover change how he works and send emails and what it took to create encrypted email options made much more impact than many explanations of how phishing can impact a company. So a real story obviously is has the greatest impact for sure. Thanks very much, Elizabeth. Excellent. So we're getting close to the end. One thing I mentioned at the beginning is that these sessions are brought to you by ClickArmor. So I just want to let people know ClickArmor is a fully gamified, interactive cybersecurity training platform that's built to be especially effective at things like remediation, role-based training, and customized training where you need something that isn't just out of the box and also keeps people engaged. And so a lot of the communication elements we're talking about here, where you have to tailor wording and vernacular for people, that's really easy to do within ClickArmor because all of the content is data driven. It's not like you have to recreate an entire video or edit a small part of a video when something changes. So we're really excited about the kinds of feedback we're getting from our very diverse type of training, which includes both learning challenges as well as interactive virtual phishing simulations. So it's really where we have people in an inbox that can sort messages based on exactly what they see, whether it's, bad senders, bad links or attachments, things like that. So it's a really effective way to train and also to assess people. And you get a lot more data from these assessments. So would be happy to chat with you, give you a demo if you're interested in something like this. And we are Canadian. So if you're here on the call from Canada, lots of times these days we're getting inquiries from people who want to buy Canadian. So love that. But let's move on to the poll results and talk about some of the answers we got. And so in our first question, which was, what is the primary challenge you face when communicating security risks to non-technical stakeholders? So that looks like a lack of understanding of technical terms or a lack of prioritization. It was lack of prioritization of time for security discussions. So that's really telling as well, right? So people just have so much to do and they haven't seen security as a priority. So that's by far, I guess, the biggest challenge that we see here. So that's really interesting. Love to get the panel's feedback and anybody else's feedback on this question. Any thoughts off the top?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we talked about. And I shared it too, is not starting with common language. I think we're quick to dive into BEC or ACH
Yeah.
or whatever term we want to throw at them, and we've lost them in the first 5 seconds versus talking about, hey, you can get a email that looks like us, it's not us, asking you to make a change versus saying, I'm going to send you a BEC email, a
Mhm.
business email compromise. That doesn't mean anything to them. They don't know what BEC stands for.
Yeah, exactly.
And they don't really care, to be honest. At the end of the day, those are not terms you need to throw at a low level individual contributor. They don't need to know the term until you teach them the term, like teach them what's behind
Yeah.
the term.
That's a pet peeve I have of a lot of security programs where their first job is teaching you what a particular term means that really only means something to the security people and it means a lot less to people. Whereas Elizabeth described, you can have a real discussion of a scenario or a situation and it makes a lot more sense to people. The second poll question was, which communication approach do you find most effective when explaining technical security concepts to non-technical people? And so simplifying technical jargon. And so this goes right back to the beginning. I think a lot of the theme for this whole session was don't assume people know what the jargon means or the acronyms. So any thoughts on that, Sajid?
Oh, sorry, I just found the raise hand button, so I just used it. Sorry about that.
I'm ahead of you. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm actually a Google Meet user primarily, but I've used Zoom in the past. So yeah, I mean, coming back to the poll question, I think one of the things that worked really well for me is back to that, like establishing that open and shared communication channel. People will never probably look at it in the beginning. Once you open that channel, you're basically preaching. But at a certain point, like there will be one news that will probably spark discussions. Like one of the, one of the recent breaches that happened with Power School, right? So, the breach basically, I posted it just like randomly on the Slack channel with a small TLDR because not everyone goes and read those articles, right? And then all of a sudden, like sparked a discussion about like, data of minors, like what can happen with that. And I see people like, coming in with a lot of different types of answers, and it just like, you see that these people probably, like a project coordinator, like she has nothing to do with security, but, like she would basically try to understand a little bit more about what's going on. So I think once you build that communication, you also put yourself out there so that people knows that you are there if they have any questions, and like you're approachable so that if they ever have any if they ever have any complex topic to discuss with, so they can come and freely discuss it with you. One other thing I think I do is I still take the time for every new onboardings. All right, on the first day I spend about an hour with them, sometimes in groups, sometimes in just like one-on-one, to make sure that they understand all the security framework that are established already, right? So talking about the acceptable use policy, personal information security policy, information security policy, incident response, what are the escalation channels, which help does that they have to go submit if their email has been compromised. So just things like that, they start taking things seriously. So here you're closing the loop with all the new onboardings because they know where the security things are. And then you're also constantly publishing things out there with an internal established channel so that they also know, okay, no, these are ongoing. We got to be careful, right? So I think trying to close these loops of communication where everyone knows that you're out there, I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and we've got a great discussion going on in the chat too. Just Mitchell was saying, when other functional areas have a meeting with security, they worry about the worst case scenario regarding what they're doing wrong, and not a situation where you're trying to work together and collaborate to reduce risk. So it's very true. There's a lot of people who just get stressed and panicked by the fact that security is emphasizing the worst case. And I think it's natural for us to say, so why should people care? Well, it's because this could really happen, right? But we have to be careful to be articulate about what it means to those people we're communicating with. So Elizabeth had another great comment about maybe just putting the agenda up front and saying, hey, we're not going to talk about blaming people or the worst disaster that can happen, but we want to figure out how we can work most productively together in a secure way. So love that comment, both.
Yeah, I wanted to tackle that one.
Yeah.
A couple ways I've done this. I call them Ask Me Anythings. I let anyone in the company set up time with me to do an AMA. I've done joint AMAs. I've come into staff meetings and say, as a security leader and as your peer, again, I preface both of those, as a security leader and your peer, here are some quick tips. What is your thoughts? And then turning it over to them and letting them share their thoughts and then letting them ask questions and then affirming their behavior, not just condemning their misbehavior. Because we can't be known as just a no team or the big brother. I always like to say, and I probably said it on a few of these, is know your no, K-N-O-W. Know why you have to say no. Just because no and yes are complete sentences, but they shouldn't be inside of cybersecurity. You need to say no, but or yes, but is a good way of articulating what you should do and not do. And I agree. Yes, we should bring Elizabeth up here at some point in time. It would love to be. It'd be good to do this in live with her. She's been around, I think, with us for a year
I've
plus.
offered many times, but she's a little
Yeah.
shy, so
But
it's
the
all
other thing
good. We love
too
to have
is
you.
on the agenda piece. Just tell them we're here to learn from you. We're here to we want you to
Yeah.
learn with us. We're here to teach and learn together. It's like that reverse mentorship I talk about. You're an SME. I'm an SME. let's learn from each other. Like I know cyber, you may know finance. So I'm going to learn finance from you, you're going to learn cyber from me. So let's have a reverse mentorship where you teach me your discipline while I teach you my discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. Really good discussion on that point. And then how does your organization establish two-way communication channels between security teams and other departments? So the largest response was dedicated communication platforms like Slack and Teams. So we've heard, Aaron mentioned it, Fleetus, and I think both of you guys did mention it. Sajib, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing that works really well for me. So first of all, you need to get all your proper policies right, and you need to make sure that those policies are, like staying or living somewhere in the employee handbook, right? And obviously, those policies do get an annual review. So for me, I try every way possible to, like reference to the policy every time I'm doing a communication so that like they know at a certain point that like this is living somewhere, this is information. So before even I go talk to Sajeev, I probably need to go over the policy just to have a basic understanding of things, right? So a lot of the policies that I've written, I've always made sure that a lot of the technical terms are properly explained. So some of the policies that I use a lot within the company is the acceptable use policy, personal information security policy, vendor management policy, and security and awareness training policy, right? So these policies are all internal facing. So we have Notion, employee handbook is there. Every time there is a new employee that's onboarded, employee handbook, within that, all the policies are listed. Even AI usage training policy, right? So like these are things that you need to get all your information right in one place, centralized, so that you don't risk giving them different information every time they're asking questions, right? Because essentially what you're doing is that you're confusing them by giving different types of answers every time. So it's better that you get a security book right, which is basically all your policies, and then make sure that you find opportunities to reference them and trying to take screenshots from those policies every time there's an answer so that they know where it's living and Sajib is not just saying things out of his mind. So it's super important that like you get your own policies right, you know where to reference them every time you get an opportunity, and like that you also build a lot of trust within the organization, and they know like everything that you're doing. There is a reason for that. So I feel like that works for me a lot. And we have probably now like 21 different policies. So it's super important that you use them whenever you need to.
That's awesome. Great. Well, we're getting close to the end. Just want to wrap up a little bit. Hope people got some good value out of this. Really nice to see the active discussion in the chat. And hopefully, people who see this on recording later will join us in future sessions. But all of these sessions are recorded and we post them in our community called the Cybersecurity Awareness Forum. And basically, you'll get notifications of our next sessions. So people are welcome to join us there anytime. And then just want to let you know the next session is coming up on June 18th. It'll be on educating employees on shadow IT and risks from taking tech shortcuts. So that should be a fun one too. And love to see everybody there who is here today and tell your friends. Love to just spread the word. So take care, everybody. And until next time, please remember engaged employees reduce risks. We'll talk to you next time. Bye bye.